Good evening, everyone, and welcome into Tennessee Volunteers Live here on the Voice of College Football Network. Tucker Harlan alongside Jordan Binkley with you on this wonderful Monday evening here in the state of Tennessee or wherever it is you may be watching. We appreciate all of you who are tuning in to watch us tonight. Y'all be sharing, like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Tennessee at the Voice of College Football Network. Jordan, how are you doing on this fine Monday evening?
Well, I'm doing great. Like holidays are over now. And of course, I'm talking about the NFL draft. It was fun to keep up with that and to see where everyone is going. All the Tennessee players that got drafted, all of them that got picked up. I'm doing pretty good right now. How are you feeling about the draft and everything?
Yeah, I watched the draft start to finish as it was both a part of work obligations, but also, just to see what my Tennessee Titans would do. And we were talking about it a little bit before the show, and not to get too far into the weeds with it, but I thought they did a nice job overall. I thought they did a very nice job acquiring the necessary pieces for next season. And that's not something I say very often because the last 4 or 5 drafts, they have been horrible about it. But yeah, I like what I saw out of the Tennessee Titans. But yeah, you're a Colts guy, aren't you? Did you enjoy what they selected?
I will say I was happy with what's his name? Warren, the tight end from
Yeah.
Penn
Well, that's a
State.
great pick, honestly,
Yes,
as a Titans fan.
I was happy with that. Ultimately, I don't think the Colts had a bad draft. I don't think it's one of the best ones that we've had, but I was happy with it. My brother brought up a good point when me and him were texting at some point. It's like, why don't the Colts just take Shador? Like just cause in the later round since he dropped, which I know has been a big, huge story. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can't really complain about it. I mean, I figured the Colts will probably be around the same position they were again last year, like they are every year. So no high expectations, but I wasn't disappointed.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Shadur thing, and obviously I don't want to get too far into this, but I do have something that I want to ask you about that whole situation. Um, and I don't know if NFL teams really considered this last week. It may be something they looked into, but given this whole helicopter parent situation that has transpired with the quarterback here in our backyard, do you think NFL organizations were in any shape or form looking at that just as a means to maybe avoid a certain prospect in the NFL draft and see, maybe Dion is a worse version of Coach Nick in that regard, just because he has some status as a former NFL player and maybe try to bend the wills of organizations as they're looking at his son?
Well, I mean, I think the comparing him to Coach Nick is a fair one for sure. I mean, I thought it was funny seeing that tweet that came out that resurfaced where Deion Sanders was talking about how he would never play for the Browns and that he would pull like an Eli Manning to
Which
not
tweet?
go
There
to
were
the.
like 5 of them that resurfaced.
It was that one. He was like, if I'm a young quarterback going to the draft, it was something along those lines. If I'm a young quarterback going in the draft, I will pull like an Eli Manning. I'm not going to go play for the Browns. And I remember hearing that before the draft. And then, it's funny that Shador ends up getting drafted there. But I mean, I think it's a fair comparison of the Nico situation going on here because you see how Nico, like, we still have to wait and see how the season goes, but seemingly Nico's in a worse position than he otherwise would have been. I don't know what's going on behind closed doors with Deion Sanders and Shador, but it definitely seems like they've rubbed people the wrong ways. I know there's been rumors about bad interviews and everything like that, which I know everyone would be excited to see those interview tapes. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a good comparison there, and I think Dion is a little bit to blame with some of the stuff going on, especially some of the video clips I've seen of him too. Some of his reactions to the draft. I don't know. It's just really interesting. And honestly, I don't know if I've ever seen a player fall so far in the draft.
Yeah, I think the free fall is a little bit surprising to say the least. I didn't think that the 5th round was where he'd fall to. I understood day 2, second or third round. The quarterback class overall is not super strong, and I can't pretend like I think the next one is going to be super strong either, because there's just not a lot of greatness at that position right now in college football, as much as it pains me to say it. But I just don't look at Shadur as this extraordinary quarterback either. I just think he's a solid quarterback. Don't get me wrong. I think he's done a lot better than what a lot of these guys in college have done right now. But ultimately, I just think he's got this whole, I don't know, larger than life thing going on off the field that kind of it just rubs organizations the wrong way. And I think what you're seeing on the internet, outside of maybe the prank call, but even that is a little bit of fake outrage, honestly. Like, people are just saying you should investigate the Falcons organization for leaking his phone number. They didn't leak the phone number. They just happened to have the wrong set of eyes stumble upon it. That's all that happened.
Yeah. Yeah, that was an interesting situation too, because when the news came out that it was the defensive coordinator for the Falcons, it was his son that was the one that apparently got into the iPad and everything. I don't know much about the Falcons and their defense and stuff, but I was like, man, are they going to fire their defensive coordinator over this? Because like, you don't like, if information like a phone number can come out, like, who's to say that plays can't come out and everything like that, and like their schemes that they have for the game. So I don't know. That was a very interesting situation for sure.
Yeah, and I don't want to spend too much more time on it because it's a
Yeah.
whole mess that you could talk about for hours. But it is good that we're at least talking about the Falcons in this situation, because that is where the first Tennessee draft prospect went to in the NFL draft. James Pierce, selected at number 26 overall by the Atlanta Falcons on Thursday night. And this was an interesting decision by the Falcons to trade back into the first round, because they had already drafted, was it Jalen Walker from Georgia in the first
Yes.
round? So they already had him, and they traded back into the first round to get James Pierce. I don't know why exactly they felt the need to do that, but they did it. And look, we knew James Pierce had first round talent. It was just a matter of whether or not he would be selected in the first round, because you get all these narratives going on about obviously the off-field stuff, which I don't know how true most of that is. And then there are some other parts of his game too that I can understand why some teams may be a little bit turned off by that. But overall, I think the Falcons have assembled a very nice roster. They just need some things to click at the quarterback position, right? Like, Michael Penix is now basically in year 1.5 as the starter there. And he did some good things last year down the stretch. It's just, you'd like to see him get a full season under his belt. But overall, I think that's a nice selection by the Falcons. Just a bit of an interesting decision to trade back into the first round.
Yeah, honestly, I love the decision, because we were mentioning earlier how I'm a Colts fan and I grew up in the days where Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis were tearing stuff up in the NFL and wreaking havoc. And they were around the same age when they came to the Colts. I think they were maybe 1 or 2 years apart. So I like the idea of getting proven pass rushers in the same draft. Like, I feel like defensive end slash like edge rushers is arguably one of the most important positions in winning football games. So I like the idea that the Falcons traded back and did that, because they could wreak havoc on defensive line if James Pierce and Walker live up to their potential. I mean, they could cause fits in the backfield, but if one of them doesn't even pan out, at least you got another one too that you could just plug right in there. I mean, the best thing would be if they both knock it out of the park, but you can at least get one good guy out of them.
Yeah, and I really, really like the roster that they've assembled down there in Atlanta. It's just whether or not they can get everything to gel on offense, I would say, because the talent is good, and it has been for a couple of seasons. They just, again, needed a quarterback to help them out. And looking at that division overall, the Bucks are beatable. I know they've won that division a couple years in a row. Don't really love what's going on in New Orleans right now. Just with the quarterback situation, I don't know if Tyler Shuck is that good of a quarterback, which is part of the reason why the Shadur fall off is so crazy. Is like, is he really worse than a guy that's 27 years old taking his first snap of NFL football? Like, are we sure about this? But you look on the defensive end for Atlanta, it like, you've already got a name in Leonard Floyd, who Georgia fans and Falcons fans will probably know well. I do remember, I guess that was 2015, where he had that. Was it an interception or was it a scoop and score up here at Neyland Stadium? Something like that. Tennessee won the game though, so it's all good. But I do remember that play, unfortunately. Let's see, what other names? Ruke Ohoro. I think that's how you pronounce his name. From Clemson, he's a pretty nice player as well on that defensive front. So you've got some proven talent up there. It's just a question now of how he fits into the system in Atlanta. If you're James Pierce, and good to see another Vol go in the first round, because there was a stretch of time where you were lucky to see Vols just get taken in the NFL draft. And then there have been some years where, it might just be one or two guys. But I think it's great to have first round picks. It does a lot for your program. And this is the second one in the last 3 years, as Darnell Wright was drafted by the Bears back in 2023.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to get another first rounder. I think this is Tennessee's 48th first round pick taken since the NFL draft has went on. Of course, you want to see that happen as much as you can. Bragging rights, being able to claim as many players as you can going into the league. I mean, if you can't win SEC championships or can't win your bowl games, at least you got something like that to fall back on. So, I mean, I think it's good for James Pierce. We'll have to see how everything ends up and how he fits with the system. But I mean, I just like the idea of having multiple edge rushers, especially and we saw how Tennessee's been able to do the past couple seasons with all their rotational guys. I feel like the more the merrier when it comes to defensive line. Get as much as you can out of that. Same with the receivers too.
Yeah, although there is one thing I will ask you on that note, Jordan, because it could have hurt James Pierce's draft stock this year. I don't know if it actually did, but is the fact that Tennessee has all of these guys that can plug and play on the defensive line, is that hurting production? Is that drawing the interest maybe towards some other guys from other teams instead of Tennessee, just because, you can be a stud and just rack up all kinds of numbers, and obviously numbers aren't everything, right? But maybe you just don't get to play as much, so teams don't see you nearly as much that year because you got all that other talent around you. Is that a bit of a problem?
Well, I feel like if they're good enough to play in the NFL, scouts will realize that. If these players aren't getting looked at by scouts because they're not getting as many reps because they're part of a rotational system, then I just feel like they're not doing their jobs as a scout, being able to properly analyze the players, because it's more than just statistics, especially for a position like defensive line, because you got pressure rates, you got all these other stuffs. I mean, you can still help stop a play without even making a tackle. Just fitting in the right hole and everything can change everything during a play. So, yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought there.
Yeah. But anyway, James Pierce going at number 26 overall to start the draft. So that's Tennessee's first pick in this draft. There were 4 overall, which is a pretty nice number for a team that, again, just hasn't had that many draft picks here in the last, 15 years or so. Did see one go on Friday night, and I'm not surprised that this guy went on Friday night. I'm just kind of surprised that he went this high. You had Omar Norman-Lott sneaking into the back of the second round at number 63 overall, going to the Kansas City Chiefs. And, of course, he is joining former Tennessee offensive lineman Trey Smith there. And, more than anything, I'm just glad he's going to a winning organization, one that has a proven track record in the playoffs. And I think doing that to a degree really helps you get noticed in the league more so than obviously playing for losing organizations. And I say that because of the success that Trey Smith has had in Kansas City, because in 2021, obviously a lot of teams passed up on him for 6 rounds, basically, because they knew about the health problems that he had while he was here at Tennessee, specifically the one instance, I believe that was his sophomore year, with the blood clots developing in his lungs. But anyway, they took a gamble on him in the 7th round, and it's paid off tremendously. They love him in the organization. He got franchise tagged 1 year after his rookie deal ended. So uh, obviously a guy that fell pretty far, and they've been able to turn him into one of the more desirable guards in the league whenever he leaves Kansas City. And I think the same could be true for Omar Norman Lott at DT. He was good here at Tennessee. Not a guy that I necessarily thought jumped out at you when he was playing on the field all the time, but I think now when you pair him up with guys like Chris Jones on that defensive front for Kansas City, you're really going to see some things from him that'll enhance his game. It's a guy that will get better because he has better players around him, I feel like.
Yeah, and to mention too, with Chris Jones being in the locker room, yeah, that'll help him be able to, because eyes are going to be on Chris Jones most of the time when
Yeah.
blockers are lined up across from him. So of course he's going to be able to get past these blockers easier with him being there, but also like the experience that he could learn from the locker room, like being able to perfect his craft and everything. I think a lot of these veterans in the NFL, if they're willing to teach, they might be the best teachers out there because they're in the modern game. They know how things work. I don't know. I think it'd be good for him to learn from him. And then plus, like the Chiefs have other talented players too, like Bolton on the and
Yeah.
the linebacker and everything. And
Yeah.
he's really stepped up as of late. So I mean, I think it's a good fit for the Chiefs
Yeah, a
and for
couple other
Omar
nice
Norman
edge
Lott.
rushers too on that team. Because you got what Mike Dana is a name that's familiar. George Karlaftis,
Yes,
really good on
Karloff.
that edge. Charles Omenihu, another guy that's been around in the league for a minute. So you got some other talent that surrounds him that can really help him. It's like having a good basketball team on the defensive line. Sometimes it's like one or two guys maybe draw a lot of attention, so the other two really benefit from it.
Yeah. So in the fourth round of the NFL draft, Dante Thornton got picked up. And I know
Yep.
that's a guy that we've mentioned a couple times. And I think last week on the show, you briefly mentioned the possibility of him going to the Raiders. And of course, that's where he ended up going at pick 108. What's your thoughts on Dante Thornton going to the Raiders and how he fits into that system?
Yeah, so I did mention that. You're correct. But not at all at where the mock had him projected though. This one had him going down at 213 to the Raiders, which I found a little bit surprising because I don't know why, but like the last week before the draft, they had him going anywhere from like borderline day 2 to day 3 guy all the way down to like the 7th or 6th round, which is a little bit of a surprise. But anyway, I do like that he got drafted by the Raiders. I know the organization is a little bit of a mess, has been for several years now. Um, yeah, he'll have Geno Smith throwing him the ball this first year, if I'm not mistaken. Which that's just kind of a bridge year for him, I guess, as a receiver and for the Raiders organization, which they kind of just had last year, which is a bit odd, but. And I mentioned this last week, right? You don't have many wide receivers competing for catches in that group. It's Brock Bowers who's the best receiver on that team, and he had a great rookie season, obviously. But the best wide receivers on that team, at least last season, in terms of productivity, were Jakobe Myers and Trey Tucker. Who, I mean, no disrespect, those are two guys you could jump in front of to get more targets if you wanted to. And they also drafted Jack Besh this year from TCU, which I didn't watch a whole lot of TCU football this year, but I know they were pretty strong offensively. Jack Besh was also the guy that lost the opening fumble, or that lost the fumble on the opening kickoff down there in Baton Rouge against Tennessee in 2022 because he transferred from LSU to TCU. I do remember that. Now, as far as Thornton's fit in the system, he's an interesting receiver because usually when you see 6'5" on a receiver, you're like, okay, this is a guy that can go up and get a 50-50 ball. That's his main purpose. But he's got obviously more twitch than the average 6'5" receiver. The guy runs a 4.3 40, which is something they like. They really, really like their speed there in Las Vegas. I mean, it's why you saw them draft Henry Ruggs a couple years ago. Really, really fast wide receiver. Um, when he was still playing, obviously, it's an unfortunate situation that happened with him off the field. But all that to say, the Raiders are a team that's desperate for receivers, kind of like another team that I happen to root for in the NFL. And I think overall, this is a good pick by them. It's just with Thornton, it never felt like he had he never reached his full potential here at Tennessee, I don't think. Because and a lot of that has to do with injuries, right? Because obviously the first year he had that injury against Mizzou and really wasn't able to come into his own until the Alabama or Kentucky games, just because he was behind Brew McCoy and Squirrel White in the pecking order. And then this year, again, injuries did kind of limit him a little bit. He was it him that got dead legged against Arkansas by either Brew McCoy or Squirrel White? Because I know there was a situation on the Tennessee sideline in the second half where like one guy was getting up and they like both hurt each other, and it's like, gosh, we can't have this happen. But I do believe there was at least one or two instances this year where he was not 100%. Hopefully that changes for him in the NFL. And again, that's the beauty of the NFL too, right? Is like some of these guys who don't really look like studs in college, they go on to have like 5 or 6 really nice years in the NFL. Like one that comes to mind, at least for me, has got to be Arian Foster. You know, he was just associated with fumbles when he was here at Tennessee. He goes undrafted. The Texans decided to give him a call, sign him as an undrafted free agent, and he had like 4 or 5 really nice seasons with the Texans, which is at least now, maybe not so much then, but that's a pretty nice run for a running back, I would say.
Oh yeah. I mean, he was like top 5 in the league for like a couple of years, maybe even led in rushing at one point. But I'm not 100% certain on that. But I mean, the Raiders getting Thornton, first of all, I know the Raiders love speed. That was Al Davis's thing all the time. He always wanted to take a good, quick player. Well, they got it this draft, and he's 6'5", like you mentioned. I like it. I mean, it fits the Raider way, the way that they've always wanted to run the organization. And on top of that, they don't have much depth at receiver, like you mentioned. So, I mean, I would imagine he's going to get playing time in his rookie year and everything. And I wouldn't be surprised if he was like the 3rd leading receiver on the team. I mean, maybe it's too quick to call, but I mean, definitely Brock Bowers is going to be number 1, I would imagine, as long as he doesn't get hurt. And then after that, I mean, I think things are wide open. I mean, he could step in there and even start for all we know coming into the season. So I think that's a great for Dante Thornton, but even greater for the Raiders to get a receiver like that in the 4th round, especially when they need it. Great that it slid to them.
Yeah, and again, I don't know what Jack Besh's ceiling is at all, but he's a guy that obviously they felt good enough to draft in the 2nd or 3rd round. So they just got a couple receivers and are just testing their options, it feels like. So I think both of those guys have a chance to overtake, say, Trey Tucker or Jakobe Meyers, because I mean, Jakobe Meyers for a lot of years, and this is just a fantasy football brain thing for me, but he's just that guy you look for on the waiver wire after a while. Because like, there's a couple receivers like him and Jarvis Landry for like 4 or 5 years were just 2 guys that I would just, if I was ever in need of a wide receiver, I could depend on them being on the waiver wire, and I would go and get them. But yeah, I think that's a system that Dante Thornton should hopefully be able to succeed in, and next year, I would imagine that the Raiders will be looking for a quarterback, and they'll try and get a guy that's a little bit more of a permanent fixture than the last couple of guys that they've had in there, and Gardner Minshew, and then I guess this season Geno Smith.
Yeah, I don't think the Raiders have really had a steady quarterback since Derek Carr. And then,
if you'd even call him steady, I know he was there for a long time, but he was inconsistent.
Yeah, well, yeah, actually, fair point. I mean, yeah, and then before that, the Raiders really didn't have much outside of, I think, like Carson Palmer played there briefly. So yeah, I don't know. Geno Smith probably not going to be the guy much longer, I would imagine, considering his age and everything. But I mean, he could probably coach up Dante Thornton a little bit too and teach him a little bit, because like outside of the receivers, quarterback's probably the best guy to talk to getting things straightened out and to get ready for the league. Um, but yeah, and then in addition, in the same round, probably the pick that a lot of Vols fans are really excited to see, Dylan Sampson goes in the 4th round to the Browns, and he will be reunited with Cedric Tillman. And of course, the guy that we mentioned earlier today, Shador Sanders.
That's not a reunion. That's
Well, no, not
just
a
a
reunion,
meeting. That's a
just a
meeting.
meeting.
Yeah. Well, if you wanted to say reunited with the Haslams, then yes, he is being reunited with the Haslams. Little Jim Haslam, of course, the owner of the Cleveland Browns. He will be competing for carries with Quinshon Judkins, who, of course, started his career at Ole Miss and then transferred to Ohio State this past season. And maybe he's a guy that, I don't know, he's like the 3rd down back for them this year. With Judkins, I don't necessarily know if I see him being an every down back, I guess you could say, just because that's 2 guys that you're drafting out of college, and I think both of them are terrific running backs. Obviously, what Judkins was doing at Ole Miss before he transferred to Ohio State and split carries with Travion Henderson, he was being thrown around in conversations with guys like Emmitt Smith and Herschel Walker, just in terms of the fact that he's a guy that was doing things that we just hadn't seen freshmen in the SEC do it a long time at running back. Obviously, Dylan Sampson this year, Offensive Player of the Year in the SEC. And it's funny, we were talking about Arian Foster earlier, another guy that had some fumble issues at Tennessee this year. It's okay to say it. He definitely had some fumble problems this year at Tennessee. And also, you mentioned how I was discussing that Thornton was originally linked to the Raiders at one point in time. Sampson was linked to the Browns as well before the draft in a few different projections. And not a whole lot of running backs on that roster before they got both of those guys this season. Now, as far as a fit goes, obviously, yes, you're going to see the field a lot. Who is handing him the ball? It's one of 5 guys.
That's the biggest question.
It's an interesting quarterback room. You've got we try to dodge Shador Sanders all night, and we just can't, because a Tennessee player has to play with him this year, or at least we think has to play with him. They have 5 quarterbacks on that roster. You can only keep 3 in the regular season. So that means either Deshaun Watson, Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, or Shador Sanders is handing the ball to Dylan Sampson next season.
Well, I imagine one of those rookies are going to have to get cut, right? Like,
yeah,
if there's only 3 quarterbacks allowed on the NFL roster, I mean, I'm sure, is Deshaun Watson, is he still on contract with them?
Yeah, but they're doing everything they can to try and get rid of him.
Well, if that's the case, I imagine they get rid of him as soon as the season's over with. And then Joe Flacco, I mean, he's like 40, I think 40 years old.
Last time he played at Cleveland, though.
He did. But I feel like it was like one of those things where it's like you're preparing for a guy the entire season, and then like he goes down at the injury, and then the backup quarterback comes in. You don't have film on him. I mean, I know he played for the Ravens back in the day, but he ain't like who he was when he was going to the Super Bowl and everything like that. So, I mean, yeah, he had some good games. I feel like it was more so they weren't expecting him to do good during those times. But I mean, Joe Flacco could be a guy to like help bring up some of these young quarterbacks, but I don't know if you'd waste a roster spot on a 40-year-old.
No. And then I'm just thinking, like, Kenny Pickett, the book has been written on him. We just know he's not a great NFL quarterback. The definition of lightning in a bottle in college. And honestly, I like the Dylan Gabriel pick. I thought he was a better college quarterback than Shador Sanders ever was. I just think, the size may be a little bit of a problem there. And I mean, you could say the same thing about Dylan Sampson. He's a very undersized running back, at least it feels like, just in the NFL. But it's just a fascinating situation the Browns have created. They always seem to do this. They can't get out of their own way. So I'm happy that Dylan Sampson is going to get to play a lot this year. But I just that organization just loves making itself a mystery every single year.
Yeah, and I think it's funny how they drafted 2 running backs and then drafted 2 quarterbacks too. Like they weren't confident
Yeah.
enough
What
of.
what they needed to draft 2 running backs though,
Well,
honestly. Like
yeah,
they
yeah.
they like cuz I forget who they had on the roster before then because it was I mean just a couple of nobodies if we're being honest. Like Nick Chubb was in free agency. Okay, so they had Jerome Ford on the roster who was basically the replacement for Chubb while he was out. Not a stellar option. And then they had Pierre Strong Jr. from South Dakota State, third year man, who I have never heard of in my life.
Yeah.
So they needed the 2 running backs. They did not need 2 quarterbacks.
No. Not at all, but the Cleveland Browns are going to Cleveland Browns.
Yep. So you have all those guys get drafted. So it's 4 guys that got drafted this year, which is a nice number for Tennessee. Again, like we said earlier in the show, uh, Tennessee not been a place where guys have been drafted much, at least in the last 15 years. Used to not be the case, but we have a parade of bad head coaches to thank for that. And you had a trio of guys get picked up as undrafted free agents after the draft ended, all trickling out very slowly on Saturday night. First guy I saw sign anywhere was Omari Thomas going to the New Orleans Saints. And of course, that's been a Tennessee hotbed for a little while now, just in terms of guys winding up there for whatever reason. Shy Tuttle is no longer there, but Alvin Kamara is a Butch Jones era player that is still there and still the starting running back down there as well. He's held up pretty nicely for the Saints. One of the few real constants they've had down there over the last decade or so. And then you got a couple other guys too. Velus Jones just signed there in the offseason. He's been floating around a little bit now. Unfortunately, I feel like every time I turn on a game where he's playing in it, he's muffing a kick. I hope that's no longer the case, but he couldn't make it on the Bears because he was just too much of a liability for them after a while. And then, of course, the other one is Alontae Taylor playing defensive back. So as of right now, 4 guys, if you include Omari Thomas in New Orleans, that is obviously pending and whether or not Omari makes the active roster this year, the 53-man roster this fall. But good to see a guy like that get signed. Amari was one of the few athletes that I had the privilege of interacting with outside of a media setting at Tennessee. Had, I think, 3 classes with him while I was in college. Really, really good dude. Very happy to see him wind up on an NFL roster, even if it is just as an undrafted free agent. And one of the better constants I feel like on this team, just as it's turned over from Jeremy Pruitt to Josh Heupel here in the last however many seasons.
Yeah, and I mean he was at Tennessee for seemingly a while, and then he's one of those guys that like you didn't really think much of like during the games, but he was always a guy that you wanted to have on your team, like a guy that isn't going to like register a whole bunch of sacks or anything like that, but he's a nice guy that you could plug in and to just play. I honestly forgot about Amari Thomas going into this draft and that being a possibility with him. So I'm really happy that he was able to find an NFL team and hopefully he can get signed and everything and then, play in the NFL. But congratulations to him and all the other players that got picked up too. Hopefully they end up getting signed as well. Like we talked about Elijah Simmons last week, and then he's going to the Cardinals now, or hopefully. I mean,
Yeah,
we'll see if he gets signed, but Elijah Simmons, I mean, there you go. Wait, I'm just now thinking about it right now. So Tennessee had four defensive linemen picked up in one shape or another.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Amari Thomas, James Pierce,
Because
Norman
it's
Lott.
2 drafted and then 2 UDFAs.
Well, there we go again. Here comes our weekly Rodney Gardner praise right
Yeah.
here. Four defensive linemen in the
If
NFL.
there is
Hopefully
a
all of
coach,
them.
yeah, if there is a position coach you can trust on the roster, it is, or on the coaching staff, excuse me, it is Rodney Garner. The guy has a knack for finding talent, and it is actually very surprising to me to see Elijah Simmons end up even considered in draft conversations, because he was last week, just as Mr. Irrelevant, which obviously that wasn't the case. But we knew the talent was there. We just didn't always see it. In fact, we rarely ever saw it for the most part. Hopefully, he can show the Cardinals that he does have that talent somewhere in there. And even though he wasn't drafted, the good news for him and JJ Watt is that he is on one of JJ Watt's old teams. And JJ Watt was the first guy to really hype up Elijah Simmons.
Hey, who knows? Maybe that's the reason why he's there right now.
Possibly. Yeah, that could very well be the case. So you mentioned the defensive side of the ball, and there was one more undrafted free agent signing that we got to get to. And this is a guy that has constantly proven everybody wrong over the last 2 seasons, probably his entire career at Tennessee, just because he started off as a walk-on. And that is none other than Will White Lightning Brooks, signing with the Kansas City Chiefs as a free agent. The pride of Mountain Brook, Alabama himself. He joins Omar Norman Lott and Trey Smith, at least on the roster for now. He will have to compete to try and get a roster spot this year with Kansas City, but good to see him given a chance with an NFL organization, because that's a guy that we just didn't know what we were doing with him before the season started last year. That's kind of where we were with Will Brooks. Then he gets the pick six against NC State, and we're like, okay, this guy's kind of nice. That's a nice start to the season for him. And then you had the Alabama game, multiple big plays in that Alabama game. He made a big play to start that game, had the shoestring tackle on Jalen Milroe that probably stopped a long touchdown run that could have completely shifted the momentum of that game in Alabama's favor. And he had the pick to seal the win against Alabama. So lots of really nice plays for him in that game. Of later games, you had a pick against Ohio State, I believe, up there, one of the few good moments from that night. And then, of course, in the Kentucky game, a big pick in the second half. So a guy that has proven his worth in the Tennessee football program. Hopefully he can do the same for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, I honestly absolutely love this pickup. Because I feel like walk-ons, a lot of times they have a chip on their shoulder and they're willing to outwork anyone in the room. And that's how they got to the position that they got to make the team and everything. And I went to MTSU, Middle Tennessee State University, if anyone's unaware. There was a guy that went there named Reed Blankenship. You might know him now for the Eagles. Yep. I remember watching him play at MTSU, and you could just tell that he played with a chip on his shoulder. And I remember telling my brother, I was like, I don't know if he's going to get drafted, but I guarantee you this guy's going to be good. I feel a little bit of the same way with Will Brooks. I don't think he's as athletic as Reed Blankenship or anything like that, but I do like the position he's in, especially with the Chiefs too. Like, I think it could really work out well for him. And I just think that he could have that dog mentality where he could find his way on the field and possibly get signed in the offseason.
Yeah, I like the comparison. Two guys that are obviously a part of winning organizations now, and obviously Blankenship a big part of the Eagles' success, along with another fellow white corner in Cooper DeJean, who had some big plays for them last season. He's good at Iowa too. Terrific punt returner when he was there at Iowa. Nice corner as well. Yeah, hopefully Will Brooks can go out and prove the Chiefs wrong. I know that's something that a lot of those guys seek to do, both as walk-ons and then undrafted free agents too, because it's a similar situation, at least, to to walk-ons. I did see somebody earlier today. It's escaping me who it was. Somebody was invited to a rookie mini camp. I don't know who exactly.
A Tennessee player
from Tennessee. Yes. Let me try and find it.
I'm really curious to find out who this is because I've not heard any news about Brew McCoy or Cooper Mays, so I'm assuming it's not them.
No, it is not either one of them. And scouring the internet now to find out. Oh, Waffle House, John Campbell Jr.
Okay.
Got invited to the 49ers rookie minicamp.
Well, good for him. I didn't even think of anything with the NFL with him, but good for him.
Yeah, guy that had been in college for 7 years, and I thought he was fine here. Never a guy that, just really stood out to me. He had that one block against NC State. He and Lance Hurd both were pretty terrific in that game. Of course, the tackle spot struggled a little bit throughout the year, and then injuries were obviously a bit of a problem for Campbell. You're not staying in college 7 years if you haven't been hurt at least at some point in your career and are getting that red shirt. And then here at Tennessee too, he missed a game or two this past season with an injury as well. So, but good to see him get invited to the rookie minicamp for the 49ers. So that's all we have on guys that wound up in NFL organizations. Now, there are two names of guys that did not end up drafted or even signed as undrafted free agents. And those two are Brew McCoy and Cooper Mays. And Brew, I'm a little surprised because I figured at the earliest he might go in the 7th round and would more than likely sign as an undrafted free agent. He did not. Cooper Mays, he was not on any draft boards, not even on ESPN's best available. And I'm not surprised to see him not get drafted, but at the same time, not being signed anywhere as an undrafted free agent is a pretty big surprise to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, I think it's surprising across the board. I mean, I feel like a lot of times when the NFL draft goes on or the draft process is going on and there's a former 5-star player that may not have lived up to the potential in college, it seems like a lot of times these NFL teams will take a risk towards the end of the
you
draft.
got signed by the Chargers, I believe, right?
Exactly.
That's bizarre. Like, how does he wind up on an NFL roster in any capacity?
Yeah, and I feel like most of these NFL teams are like, okay, well, they didn't fit their college program. Maybe it was the scheme. Maybe it was something or another. Maybe we can correct these things and get all that talent out of him. It's just shocking to not want to take a chance on a player like that, especially because he's not a small receiver either. And I mean, he was a dog his whole entire time at Tennessee too. Like he's a guy that would want to fight for extra yards and whatnot, like a real scrappy player. I don't know. It's disappointing to see that he's not getting any attention. Do you know when like the deadline for all of this could be for him to get?
I have no idea, to be completely honest with you, Jordan. And it with Brew, and I get it, injuries are definitely a part of the problem. This year he missed a game or two with some injuries, and then last season, of course, they had that devastating injury against South Carolina. But he's a guy that has a quality that is often overlooked in receivers, but is very useful, and that is his blocking. Tennessee's blocking from its wide receivers dipped considerably in 2023 once he was injured and done for the year. And, it reminds me of another, and he's been compared to this guy a little bit, but he does remind me of another receiver that played here at Tennessee, obviously because they wore the same number, but also they're similar in stature, and that's Jawan Jennings. And a big reason why the 49ers drafted him and a big reason why he has stayed there past his rookie deal is because he is a terrific blocker in addition to his explosive capabilities as a wide receiver. So I feel like that's a quality that, if an NFL organization desires it, he's out there and you can go and grab him for it. I think that would be terrific for him. Obviously, not quite the same versatility as Jawan, but I think if you want to, I guess, upgrade in the toughness department, you can absolutely do that with Brew.
And even at the very least, he could be a really good practice squad guy that could challenge some of these
Yeah.
corners, especially like, he's got the size, he's got a lot of skills, the blocking and everything, teaching the corners to be able to get off of that, because with how good of a blocker he is, I think he'd be a perfect practice guy to get some of these people ready and everything. I'm just so shocked that no team took a chance on him. I'm not as surprised with Cooper Mays, to be honest, because I've heard so many things, like so many articles of him being overlooked and everything, and people questioning his size and whatnot. I'm still trying to understand all of that. I guess I haven't watched enough Cooper Mays film or anything, but I feel like you got to take a chance, at least pick up on a practice squad, like any player that's coming in the draft that was like a semifinalist for a award. Like, what is there to lose by taking a player like that?
Yeah, and there were only like 8 or 9 centers on the board. This was in a lot of ways a very strange NFL draft too, because I believe you had what, 4 specialists selected? A long snapper from
Yes.
Vanderbilt went in the 7th round. I don't know if I've ever seen that. I know that broke some kind of draftless streak for them at Vanderbilt. Like they hadn't had a player drafted in however long, and it got broken because the Patriots decided, you know what, I'm going to take a long snapper this year out of Vanderbilt. That's just such an odd decision. Like those guys usually get signed as free agents, undrafted free agents, I would imagine, but not this year. Bit of a difference this year, but yeah, Brew McCoy and Cooper Mays not being signed, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, honestly. And I hope they do have a career in football past their career here at Tennessee, because I think it would just be a real shame if no team was to look at either of those guys and say, I love what this guy is about. I think he would be terrific in our organization, because I really think both of them provided a lot of value while they were here at Tennessee.
Yeah, I agree too. And I think they were two of the leaders on Tennessee's offense this season too. So I mean, there's just a lot to like from these players, especially coming from like free agents and stuff. I feel like teams got to take a chance on them eventually. But there is other news going on outside of the NFL draft surrounding Tennessee. Of course, Tennessee safety Jakobe Thomas has entered the transfer portal. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, you mentioned MTSU earlier when you were talking about Reed Blankenship. And of course, it has come back here in a way because he transferred to Tennessee from MTSU. And outside of Nico, this is not a loss that I'm happy about. No loss is good, obviously, in the transfer portal. Some guys you can just look at though and say, it's not that we're better off without you. We just kind of know that you're not going to see the field, and it's like we just shake our hands and move on. I don't feel that way with Jakobe Thomas. Jakobe Thomas was a guy that said he wanted to play at Tennessee. It was his dream to play at Tennessee, and he's just decided to leave because NIL valuations were just not good enough here at Tennessee. It's bizarre. It's really, really bizarre because, of course, he's an in-state kid. He's from Tullahoma, so this is very meaningful for him, and a guy that made all kinds of impact plays while he was here at Tennessee. He had that big hit in the Oklahoma game that was more or less Oklahoma's welcome to the SEC moment, if you will. And he made a lot of big time plays like that, and then he had another one in the Bama game that was pretty big too. It's just bizarre to me that he's decided to move on in this quick of a period. He announced his intentions last week and officially entered right before the portal closed sometime today. Reportedly between Florida State and Miami right now. That is the latest intel that On3 has there. I don't know what the draw is to Florida State. There have now been 2 guys from Tennessee at least by my count, that have committed to Florida State this offseason. Those are Squirrel White and Jason Jenkins, the defensive lineman. What is so appealing about a team that went 2-10 and forgot how to play football last season? I really don't know. Miami, I get it a little bit. Miami's, depending on who you ask, it can be a really fun city. It's a program with a lot of history to it, and they're coming off a pretty nice season that they had with Cam Ward down there on South Beach. So maybe he's getting a good look from them. Apparently, they're talking to players all the time, it feels like, with Miami, because it sounded like Nico and Carson Beck were in mid-season negotiations with them, just from various rumblings that we've heard. But this one stinks. It really, really stinks. And I think overall, when you look at the defensive backfield, you're hoping Jermon McCoy is good to go. Jordan Thomas should be fine. Ricky Gibson has not entered the transfer portal, which is a good sign. That's good for Tennessee. A guy that showed some nice stuff last year. And you're hoping he can come into his own even more this season. And looking at the spring football roster, Andre Turrentine's still around too. So that's another guy you could have back there at safety. But you mentioned it earlier. Boo Carter wants to see the offensive side more. So you're going to have to plug some other guys in that nickel spot. And this does hurt your depth a little bit. You just got to hope some of these younger guys can step up and really fill those voids left for however long it is that Jermod is gone. And then, of course, Jakobe, because I thought Jakobe was a quality piece to this defense last year. It's really sad to see him go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm disappointed that he's gone for sure. With everything you mentioned, like McCoy's injury, just how so thin Tennessee is, the defensive backfield. It's concerning seeing him leave. I don't know what the appeal is to Florida State, like you mentioned. I mean, maybe because they were so bad that they have a lot of opportunities to start on both sides of the ball. Maybe that's the case. I'm not sure. But it's definitely going to hurt losing Jakobe Thomas. I mean, especially with the amount of safeties Tennessee's lost. But I was going to say something, but I forgot what it was. But maybe it'll come back to me. But yeah, Jakobe Thomas, very disappointed in that. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. So not only is it disappointing because Tennessee really needs to get better defending the pass this season, and now they're depleted a little bit, losing defensive back, especially Jakobe Thomas. But I lost it again.
Yeah. And, it didn't really – the flaw didn't really show last year. It didn't feel like until that Ohio State game, because really up until then you just hadn't seen a receiving core that was – 3 deep at wide receiver, honestly. The best receiver you saw in the regular season was Ryan Williams. And I'm not necessarily saying Tennessee locked up Ryan Williams, because he did have several catches in that game. He also had a ton of targets too. But it helps when you're only focusing on one guy as opposed to 3, and one of which, as a freshman, should have been a first-round pick this year. I mean, honestly, with Jeremiah Smith, I don't know what the other rosters have just in terms of receiver talent in the SEC this year that Tennessee's going to have to go against. You would figure that some, like mainly Oklahoma and Mississippi State, will be improved at that position. So it's just really going to depend on what you're going against. And I already saw where Syracuse lost a guy to Penn State, Trevor Pena. So he's one that you don't have to worry about anymore. But you just got to figure some things out in the secondary this year. And I wasn't as worried about it last year. I kind of liked the uncertainty element of it, just because you didn't really succeed necessarily when you were stuck with that same group of guys that you held over from Pruitt, like Tamarion McDonald and Wesley Walker, all those guys, Danico Slaughter, Jalen McCullough. Like, it felt like they had a ceiling and they had hit it. You just needed to move on. And I felt like Tennessee improved there as a result this year. But you just got to stay healthy back there this year. That's the main thing, and you got to hope everybody's ready to go because Jakobe Thomas going to the portal. That's a big blow to this room. I feel like.
And say Tennessee does have to rely heavier on someone like Boo Carter this season to fill the void. If he's not getting as many reps as he'd like on offense, what do you think about him staying with Tennessee? Do you think he jumps into the portal or
We just never know at this point. It's just such a mystery with these guys because they'll say they love the place and then they'll just back out. Like loyalty is not what it used to be for a lot of these guys anymore. Um, it's insane how all that has changed. Which speaking of loyalty, I did want to bring this up because it transpired during our show last week, and it elevated even more when Arkansas announced that it would be suing to get back lost NIL funds that Madden Iamaleava had taken from it. Uh, once he announced he was transferring out, I think that's the right decision, and you're going to need to see more collectives do this when kids transfer out because you can't just show up, take your money, and then when you get a pay cut, just be like, "Oh well, I'm going here now." I don't feel like that's a good strategy for anybody.
no? And do you think the reason why Tennessee is not trying to sue Nico is because he already fulfilled his contract? Because I don't know anything about his details.
Yeah, contracts are just we don't really know what the details are in these contracts right now. We do know that Jake Merklinger signed one today. I can tell you
Yeah.
that. Have not looked at the financial agreement there, um, but it's just very ambiguous at this point. That's the word I'm looking for. We don't know what these things are. I guess I'm fine if Tennessee didn't pay Nico the extra money he was asking for because he did fulfill his end of the bargain. I guess again, very ambiguous terminology we are using to describe these contracts because simply put, we don't know much about them right now. But overall, yes, I think both Tennessee and Arkansas have made proper decisions, and it sounds like too Arkansas has hired. Well, I know they've hired Tom Mars, but for those of you who don't know, he is in the realm of sports law. That branch of legal stuff. That branch of law and working as an attorney to represent some big time clients in these cases, and he does not lose. He does not lose very often. So good luck to the Ian Maliava family. You're going to need it against Tom Mars.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Um, yeah, it's still a crazy situation like going on with the Amalievas. Like I feel like we're not done with this story yet. And I think that this is going to be a big topic like going into the season. Like how is Nico going to play? Like what's the situation with Arkansas? How is that going to unfold? Is he going to have to pay back the money or not? If so, does he still have the money? Can he return it back? Like what comes to the situation with that? If Madden doesn't have say he's already spent a chunk of the money and then he's owed what was it like 400 500,000 I think they're asking for.
Yeah.
That's a quite a bit of money for a college kid.
Yeah.
um
And
I mean
California taxes will chop that in half.
the California taxes too, and then it's not like that's gonna get any better with him going to UCLA either, so I don't know what's going on. Like if he's gonna have to pay out this money, he might have to take some out of whatever he's getting with UCLA. And then how much money is he making then at that point? And then, like, if the rumors are true with the Malievas, if they really were seeking money, then they've done it in the worst way possible and they've failed at that. If all of that ends up being the case, especially with Nico losing out as much money as he has, because I think it's rumored that like after taxes, he'll be making somewhere like between 800 to 900K
Yeah.
or something like that when he was
Yeah.
making allegedly like 2.4 million at Tennessee. I mean,
Yeah.
it really seems like a whole bunch of bad moves after another.
Yeah. So as we wrap up the show here, there is one more thing that I would like to address, and it is the lack of activity from Tennessee in the transfer portal right now because I don't know if it's a problem. I don't know if this is what Josh Heupel planned to do the entire time, but other than having a few visitors in, you've not seen anybody commit. in positions where you at least appear to be needy. Just looking right now, some targets that committed elsewhere. Trayshawn Hurry was one that committed, I think, pretty soon after we mentioned his name on the show last week. Uh, he was from San Jose State, committed to Louisville, and then more recently, Keelan Marion, the guy that we were really looking at, he goes from BYU to Miami. Who I don't know what kind of money they got down there at Miami, because they're in all kinds of battles with Tennessee. It feels like for
And they
for
win.
Tennessee's own
And they
players.
win. They
Yeah,
win.
they
They
do win a lot of time.
took Barron. They took what's his name? Maui Goa.
Yep, Francis Mauigoa.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's I don't know what kind of money they're handing out down there, but fine, win your ACC titles and lose and like the
In front of 2,000
Citrus
people.
Yeah, I don't know. That's what they're doing down there in Miami. But yeah, they haven't landed very many players out of the transfer portal. Any players, actually, to be more specific, in this spring window. And at wide receiver, I'm aware that they have some good young players like Rodarius Jackson from the Memphis area. He was really good in the spring game. I like what we saw there. Travis Smith Jr. is another big name that's been floated around. Maybe it's just the fact that they want to play some of these younger kids sooner, but it's just, I don't know. It's just kind of funny to see them not really attack the transfer portal, and I know that's bothered some people just from reading some things on the internet. Does it bother you, Jordan, at all that they're not really reaching into that transfer portal?
It's concerning for me because I'm really shocked that we did not take a single. Well, we took Jefferson from Alabama, but outside of that, like, we really haven't been targeting receivers when we only had 3 scholarship people remaining to begin with. So, like, I'm concerned seeing it on paper, but I like to think that I trust Josh Heupel enough to figure everything out. I feel like with how they were just passive in the transfer portal, it makes me think that he's got something cooked up his sleeve that we just don't know about. Maybe he really likes these freshmen receivers, and maybe he likes the guys that he has and doesn't feel like he needs to go out and spend money on some other big name person coming out of the portal. So, I mean, it's concerning to see that, but it also reassuring to me at the same time, because I look at that as confidence from Josh Heupel. And of course, I don't know what's going on in the locker room and behind closed doors, but I went from being concerned to more so interested.
Yeah. I'm not going to pretend to be on either side just yet. I don't know if this is a statement that the staff is trying to make by saying we're tired of busts in the portal. We're going to try and just promote some of these younger players.
But have they had busts in the portal though? Like
they haven't really.
Like McCoy's like panned out. Norman Lott just got drafted and everything. I mean,
both McCoys panned out now that you say it.
Yeah. And then I mean, I guess Pruitt was the one that got Hendon Hooker into there, wasn't it?
Yeah. And we don't a lot of these guys we still don't know. Like Lance Hurd could make a big jump this year. Chris Brazel, another guy that could make a big jump. There's just different kinds of possibilities there, and we just don't know yet. Obviously, a couple new offensive linemen that I think people are really interested to watch this season and see how they really gel with the rest of the group. But I'm not gonna sound the alarm just yet. I know a lot of people already have, but and this is a theory that I've had for a while. I just wonder at what point college football coaches will say, you know what, the transfer portal is just not. It's not benefiting us the way we would like, I guess is the best way to put it. Because I'll say this: the guys that Tennessee has gotten out of the portal, with the exception of one or two, they've been fine players while they were here. They're not guys that you will, buy a poster of and hang it on your wall and look at that as a worthy keepsake in like 20 years. That's just not at all how I see most of these guys, with the exception of one. We all know who that one is. It's just, I don't know. It's not mediocrity necessarily, but it's not it's not pumping out a lot of talent that is just you're just really, really desperate to see Tennessee land all these guys. It's just I don't know. It's not worked the way that maybe some of these coaches and programs would have liked.
I will say on the bright side of Tennessee not targeting any more receivers, um, look at Tennessee's like receiving history. I mean, I've been watching Tennessee pretty much every game since 2009. I can't recall a time where Tennessee's not at least had a couple of good receivers. Like even during the times when Tennessee was missing bowl games and everything like that, Tennessee's always found a way to at least have a couple of guys um, go out there and make some catches. So, I mean, if history repeats itself, I think Tennessee will be fine. I think it was important that Josh Heupel really targeted the offensive line because that's what I was concerned with the most heading
Yeah.
into the season. And I thought that was an issue with Nico last year and why he didn't. I mean, he didn't do bad, but I mean, people were talking about him being top five. Like all the Vegas odds had him as like top five for the Heisman Trophy, and
Yeah.
then who's to say he couldn't have actually lived up to that if he had the blocking that he needs to? So I think offensive line was one of our Tennessee's greatest areas of need. And I think that Tennessee got some good guys with that. The receivers, I'm just going to trust in Josh Heupel for the meantime and just assume that Tennessee will at least have a couple of good receivers like they seemingly always do. I mean, even Josh Palmer, I mean, he was a pleasant surprise a couple of years back. I don't know if many people had high expectations for him, and then he came out of nowhere and
Still
was
making it
doing
in the NFL.
in the NFL too. Yeah.
Yeah. Had a very nice I thought he was probably underutilized here. Another one of those guys that you just didn't get the full potential out of. Like he was nice here when they were targeting him. It felt like made a good play every now and again, and he's become a nice depth piece in the NFL at the very least. Might do more than that with the Bills next year. We'll see. But yeah, like you mentioned, even in some of those bad years, like Marquez North is a name that comes to mind. Uh,
Yeah.
Very nice receiver that just happened to play for some pretty not great teams while he was here at Tennessee.
And then Josh Malone too. I mean,
Yep.
Tennessee was iffy during those times, to
And
say the
neither of
least.
those guys really made it in the NFL, but even when they were here, they were more pleasant on some of the most unpleasant teams in program history.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm just gonna go ahead and assume that Tennessee will probably be fine from the wide receiver position, but it is interesting that they didn't make it more of an effort. But yeah. Is there
Yeah.
anything else that you wanted to talk about on here before we get
That's
off?
about all that's about all I have this week. Just thinking about some of the just some of the players that Tennessee needed to get out of the portal. Like receiver and DB really seem like the two areas at this point Tennessee needs to be targeting. Obviously, Joey Aguilar was your need addressed at quarterback, and I've been looking at the highlights, and I've come to the conclusion that I just won't know until he plays SEC football regularly what to think of him, because a lot of it is against Troy and Arkansas State down there in the Sun Belt. You're not going to know until he plays good competition regularly, and then outside of that, like there's not much else that Tennessee really needs to address out of the portal.
Yeah, I would say like got the quarterback, defensive backs. That's something Tennessee probably could have gotten more of. But I mean, we'll just have to wait and see how the season goes out. It'll be interesting to see how the quarterback situation goes for sure. Um, and then I don't know. I think this will be an interesting season for Tennessee, and it will be a telltale sign to see how like Josh Heupel is with like such a because this is probably like Heupel's most depleted team. I would have to say. So it'd be interesting to see how he responds during the season, and if Tennessee can like like win like 8 to 9 games, I would say that that was a successful season,
Yeah,
considering everything that's happened.
and we'll definitely pour over expectations more as we get into the summer because let's just be honest, there's a stretch from like June to really about SEC media days where you just don't have much to talk about. So we will definitely get into the expectations as we progress into the doldrums of the year on the college football front. But that is going to do it for us this week here on Tennessee Volunteers Live on the Voice of College Football Network. Appreciate everybody for tuning in tonight. Y'all be sure to like, share, and subscribe to Tennessee at the Voice of College Football on YouTube. And we will talk to you guys again next week. For Jordan Binkley, I am Tucker Harlan. So long.
See you soon.